Our story starts with a young guy waking up shaken after a suicide attempt that clearly worked, and now the wound on his head is closing. Blurred memories. A voice calling Klein. Who is Klein? That's not me. At the same time, Leonardo and Dan, detectives, are investigating the murder of Welsh and Naya. It looks like suicide, but that doesn't rule out that some dark ritual was done that caused their deaths. There they find a photo of Klein, and we learn he was their friend at university. We return to the young man after he calms down, and he remembers all the memories of the body's owner, Klein, but his memories about the incident are still fuzzy. He doesn't remember anything from it. Amid the blurred memories, the young man opens Klein's diary and reads it, and we know that the three friends found an old notebook, and after a month they actually managed to decode the symbols on the first page and know some info about the book. Written in the Fourth Era, the Antigonus family's book, and some words that don't make sense, the Black Emperor, the Empire of Theodore. The last page was the thunderbolt that struck the young man. Everyone will die, including me. Why did Klein write that, and what did he face? At that moment he hears a voice from outside the room. Hide everything, Klein, and someone wipes away the blood traces. This is Melissa Moretti, Klein's younger sister. What's wrong with you? Why are you kidnapped like that? The young man sits thinking about what happened and how he woke up to find himself in a body he doesn't know. He remembers his life in his world and that he was unlucky. But one day he found an old ritual for lucky fate and decided to do it. At that time his soul transferred into Klein's dead body. Melissa interrupts him again, telling him she's going to school. Klein leaves her, and in his head there's only one thought. He must do the lucky ritual again. Maybe he can return to his world. Klein leaves the house to get a look at the city of Tingon where he lives. A class-based society. Ruined houses and poor people just meters away from palaces and markets. Our guy walks until he bumps into a clown who invited him to the circus that night. Klein notices something behind him, nervous, and walks on. At that moment eyes are watching him. Klein keeps walking until he reaches a tent to hide in. Inside, Klein finds a fortune teller who offers to tell him something for free since Klein is the first customer today. Our guy shuffles the cards. The fortune teller pulls 3 cards. Klein chooses a card, and it turns out to be the Joker card. It means a new beginning. Klein leaves the tent and notices the man who had been watching him is gone. At that moment he gets home and decides to perform the lucky ritual he'd done in his own world so he can get back to his body. He performs the ritual, but what happens isn't what he expected. The performer feels a sharp pain, his soul being pulled out of him. He opens his eyes and finds himself in a strange world, fog everywhere. At the same time 2 people were using magical tools and, by chance, Klein summoned them. And we learn, buddy, that this world is entirely Klein's world. Whatever word you speak gets realized. The first time Klein understood this, he imagined a table and chairs for them and a throne chair too. Then Klein learned his name there as the Joker, the card he chose from the tarot at the fortune teller, and that this was an experiment he was undergoing. Klein managed to understand the nature of the 2 people in front of him, an innocent girl and a cautious, grumpy sailor. Then the girl says she's wanted something strange to happen to her for a long time, and she asks how she can become one of the beyond, the transcendents. The sailor explains, to become a transcendent you join an organization like the Night Lords or the Lord of Storms or others. The transcendents or the beyond are humans with magical abilities who defend people in secret. Most people have never seen one. But then the girl says she wouldn't be free, she'd have to follow the organization. She refuses and asks if there's another way. The young man says he has 2 recipes, the sailors and the spectators, both for level 9. He explains the spectators' abilities, and at that moment Klein, trying to understand, realizes they're talking about a kind of mysterious power and that level 9 is one of the power tiers. And the question here is the fog and this world a type of the transcendence powers? The girl interrupts Klein with a request, if possible, could you make more gatherings like this? That's also the sailor's view. Klein thinks for a moment that he might be exposed, but the next moment he decides to stop being afraid. The more he uses the fog, the higher the chance he'll return to his world. Klein agrees, and they set their meetings for every week. The girl and the sailor agree each will pick a nickname, and they decide their names will come from the same game Klein picked his name from, the tarot. At the moment Klein feels a knock on the door, he starts losing his strength. His soul is being pulled back and will return to his body. He stops everything and ends today's gathering. They all return to their places. Klein wakes up and is surprised to find the detectives hiding the diary and the gun. He opens the door and surprised by the man he saw earlier in the city, Leonardo. He tells him he was protecting him. Leonardo enters with another man, Dan Smith. He greets Klein and tells him the whole thing is a few questions. Then Leonardo finds the diary and reads the last sentence, "Everyone will die, including me," and asks Klein why he wrote that. But Klein's memories of the incident are fuzzy and he doesn't remember. Dan tells him you were at Welsh's before he died and a gun went missing from there and they'll probably find it here. Klein admitted where the gun was from the very first second. Dan asks if he wants to add anything. Klein tells them what happened. He woke up yesterday at his desk and someone had tried to kill themselves. It was a failed suicide attempt, and his memories of the incident are fuzzy. That's what Dan concluded too, but they decide to give Klein a psychological test to probe his memories. Thank God you're safe, hero. You're the first case to stay alive in this kind of case. Every time the victims die. Klein goes down with Dan and Leonardo, afraid they'll learn about his memories from his world. At that time, there was a kid stealing bread who was running away. Dan catches him and tells the shop owner to take back the stuff and don't hurt him. Klein, anxious about what happened to the kid, runs away from them until he reaches a place to catch his breath and suddenly time and place freeze. He realizes their transcendence. Klein continues running, but the ground crumbles beneath him and the roads block one after another until he can't reach the rest of the people or get into a car. After making sure no one is behind him, he tells the driver to stop, but Dan, who was driving, Klein wakes up shaken. Was it all a dream? The door opens and Dan stands at the end. Dan introduces himself anew, Night Hunter Dan Smith. The house collapses and reshapes at Dan's will. Klein confirms Dan is a transcendent. But then a witch comes from behind him. Klein finds himself inside his mind and sees his father and mother. And the witch is also inside his mind and she can't see his secrets or family because they're inside the fog. The witch grabs him and asks him about the Antigonus notebook. We learn it's missing and Klein doesn't know anything about it. The second question is, what were you doing at the time of Welsh and Naya's suicide? At that moment, a gun appears in Klein's hand and points at his head. He killed himself, and that is his subconscious answering the witch's question. Klein wakes up and the witch confirms to Dan that he indeed tried to kill himself and that his memories of the incident are gone. In addition, the Antigonus notebook is missing and there's a threat on Klein's life. Dan then offers him to become a transcendent and join them because they can't protect him otherwise. Before we continue, I'll explain the power system in the Lord of Mysteries world. Humans can get various transcendent powers by drinking chemical doses, and they get different powers. There are 22 different power paths like the Seer, the Corpse Collector, the Joker, and others. Each path has distinct abilities. For example, the Joker path grants nimbleness, speed, acrobatic moves, and illusion magic. And each path has 9 levels of power starting at level 9, the weakest, up to level 0, which is the ruler's power. A transcendent can evolve from level 9 to the next only if they digest the level 9 dose first, and this happens by a method called the way of acting, meaning the person must live in a way suited to the path they chose. For example, a seer must meditate, foresee the future, use spirit vision, live like a seer. After digesting it, they can take the next level's dose so they don't lose their mind or go berserk or turn into a monster. The world is full of organizations like the Secret Order, and each organization tries to gather as many doses as possible. Back to our story. Klein, heading to the place Dan told him about to join the Night Falcons, enters Wright's tavern. Just when Wright is mentioned as linked to Dan Smith, someone takes Klein down a secret passage to an underground company that's basically a security firm. He meets Rosin, the receptionist, who walks him around the place and introduces him to some Night Falcons members and the gate until they reach the leader of the organization, Dan. Klein enters and signs the contract, and after that they warn Dan about insanity after the dose. Klein is surprised but follows Dan while Dan tells him about members of the organization who died from madness or turned into monsters because of the doses they took. We learn the Night Falcons have doses for 4 of the 22 paths: the Sleepless, the Corpse Collector, the Seer, and the Revealer of Secrets. Klein must now go to the lab to decide which dose to take. Dan finishes by saying they're guardians, but in the end just a bunch of miserable people who fight threats and monsters day and night. Our hero walks thinking about which dose to choose until he finds the lab and meets old Neil, who will help him choose. Neil is the only seer in the organization and is a weak level 9. Neil first helps Klein with some arrangements and they talk. In the middle of the conversation, Neil tells him about King Rozel's diaries and that he was able to gather only 3 pages and that for 150 years no one could decode their code. He shows Klein the papers and Klein learns they're in Chinese and Neil can read and understand them because it's a language in the other world. Klein reads the first page, an ordinary diary of King Rozel, but the second page, which is important, reveals the king faced a problem and admitted he was wrong to have chosen the path he chose, and that the best power paths are the trainee, the seer, and the thief. Neil bursts out laughing because someone like him is trying to decode the papers, but Klein has already decided which path he'll choose. He'll follow Rozel's words and pick the seer. Neil prepares the dose and gives it to Klein, who is hesitant at first but remembers his desire to return to his world and drinks the dose. At the moment it mixes with his blood, it reaches his heart. Dizzy as the power flows through his body, hears Neil telling him to resist. At first he imagines something existing in this world and he succeeds. The next step is to imagine something that isn't there. The ground underneath breaks, his power shakes the city, everyone feels his power but they don't know what it is. Back to Klein's imagination. He imagines rockets, planes, and tanks until he imagines all of space. Neil shouts for Klein to control his power, and he actually manages to stop it and control it. Klein opens his eyes and gains the ability of spirit vision, which lets him know the health condition of whoever's in front of him. But he sees watching eyes and gets startled and tells Neil, who says a ritual is being performed. Klein stops spirit vision by knocking his head twice because it consumes his power, and Neil gives him his gun and his tools, and the receipts for these things, but don't worry, Dan will pay you. Klein returns to Dan, who senses his power and warns him of something else. At first he'll see strange things. In the strange world of transcendence, death can happen in a way you've never seen or you might hear things you shouldn't. Finally, Neil gives him initial training before officially assigning him and gives him a 12-pound advance salary. He leaves to buy a seer's staff and a suit, and Klein's daily tasks are set. First, he's to walk around Welsh's house. He might feel something and find the Antigonus diaries. Then he meets Leo. His second task is to find the whereabouts of a kidnapped child. Klein uses his staff, activates spirit vision, and can see everywhere in the city as if he has eyes everywhere. He can see what happened and how the abduction took place. The staff works like a GPS and they move until they reach the house where the kid is. Leo breaks in, break the place, and with ease beat the two kidnappers and are done in a minute. But the story doesn't end there. Klein feels a strange power and both kidnappers get up and transform into crazy monsters and start attacking Leo, who dodges their blows and then uses his transcendent ability. As soon as the monster came to strike, it disappeared, leaving Leo to deal with Klein and find its location. The monster tried to ambush Klein, but he shot it and the bullet hit it. It tried to escape again, but Leo used his night poem ability and pulled the monster to the Crimson Flower Garden, and with that artistic move he put the monster to sleep. Suddenly Klein felt a strange feeling, a voice behind the door calling Hermesis, and he sensed he had been there before. Leo wakes him and they call the rest of the Night Falcons and return Klein home. Leo whispers to him, "I always knew he wasn't extraordinary, and it seems Leo has secrets nobody knows." Klein goes home happy, bouncing from what he did and the money he got, and opens a door that opens by itself, and he finds himself back in the same house he was in earlier. He tries to go out, but it's impossible now. He sees the door he saw before in front of him, and the same voice calls closer to Klein, and he enters. He sees a book, and in its end reads, "Everyone will die, including me." Klein wakes up in his house and knows the Antigonus diary is in this place. At the same time, Dan and Leo are with the man who was following Klein in the market, and from his memories they learn he has a connection to the Antigonus diary and that he's part of an organization called the Secret Order. At that moment, they get news that Klein actually found evidence of the book. They head to the place and find a rotten corpse there, but they don't find any trace of the book, and the victim's son is missing. So it's Klein's job now. Indeed, Klein uses his ability to find Pepper, and of course Pepper has the book, but he loses control. The staff spins everywhere until the place reaches Klein. But Dan catches up and it's clear an external power is affecting the search. They decide to use another method to search. They return to their headquarters and Klein is nervous about what happened. Dan calms him and gives him a gift, a special necklace that will improve his abilities, and that the solution now is in a sealed artifact made by the Antigonus family and requested from the Knights Templar who are on their way now. We learn it has destructive capabilities and must remain sealed behind Chinese gates in different areas like the gate behind them now. The artifact en route is a level 2 power item, meaning it's dangerous. The Knights Templar arrive, including the Corpse Collector and Nightmare, and the medium of spirits, Dolly Simon, someone we've seen before. They all gather and perform the activation ritual for the artifact, and yep, as you guessed, they remove the seal from the artifact, which is item number 2049 and highly dangerous. We discover the artifact is alive and is a toy clown, the same clown that had been in Klein's head until he realized it could harm him. Klein's body gets tied up with strings and he can't move. He turns into a wooden puppet until Leo reaches him with a hit on his shoulder. Because to get out of its control, someone has to wake you up. And the question here, suppose we all fell under its control. How would we wake up? The answer is it's impossible. That's how it normally is. The situation remains like that until the clown approaches Pepper's collar, who has the Antigonus diary, and shows unusual aggression toward him. They conclude Pepper is from the Antigonus family lineage. They put a seal on the clown and head to Pepper's location, which the clown is guiding them to. At that time, Pepper has the Antigonus diary and is performing rituals that cause the book to merge with his body. But unfortunately, the Night Falcons aren't the only ones looking for the book. The Secret Order is also after it, and among them are the clown who hit Klein and the man who followed him. The clown arrives late after the diary fused with Pepper, which will turn him into a monster. But the clown senses an opportunity. He feels the presence of the artifact and augments its power with his magic and waits to see what will happen. The Night Falcons reach the place and Klein senses through his powers that there's a danger in the warehouse. The door opens and a bloody fog fills the place and a monstrous, uncontrolled beast emerges and attacks the Night Falcons. Dan and Leo use a dual spell. Oh, terrifying threat and the hope of screams. One thing always true. The flower that bloomed once dies forever. They can pin the monster with it, but only for a moment. The monster breaks the spell with one hit, and it's clear this isn't just a transcendent who lost control, it's a dead spirit. Dolly uses the gaze of death to find the monster's weak point, but she needs 5 seconds. During that time, Dan and Leo must keep the monster under control. Leo dodges its strikes and hits it with fire. Dan uses the dream web to bind the monster. Klein feels danger from the diary and a massive power erupts that attacks Dan and the artifact. At that moment, the Knights Templar also enter the fight but can't handle the monster. Dan continues the ritual despite his injuries to control the monster. Klein exploits its weakness in the battle and uses the night sleep ability to put the monster to sleep. Then Dolly finds the weak spot and uses the Hand of Hell to chop the monster's body, and finally it explodes. Klein hears whispers coming from the ground as the rocks move to reveal the diary, and Dan grabs it. The clown had been waiting for that moment. Dan notices the clown moving toward Klein and the diary and at the last moment saves him, but it turns out to be illusion magic. The clown moves with terrifying speed. They can't stop him. Klein remembers this clown was the circus clown, and again illusions appear. They learn the clown is a level 7 transcendent. The clown attacks them, trying to hit the knight, but the clown dodges every blow and even Leo can't stop the clown. Dan fires at him, but the clown avoids all bullets and snaps his fingers, and every bullet Dan fired returns at him. Klein realizes the clown can predict actions before they happen and that if multiple people attack him, he'll make mistakes. Indeed, Dan fires a shot that hits the clown's side. The clown flees with Leo after him. He changes the bullet's place to his armor so he can move. Then he spins and attacks Klein. And for the umpteenth time, illusions appear and the real body is freeing the artifact. Everyone is shocked, but before they can do anything, the artifact establishes control over everyone. That's due to the Antigonus diary's power. Their bodies all get linked and the artifact controls them as it wishes. All that's in Klein's head is an external power that can surpass him. He remembers the fog and uses a spell to enter that world, and there he used his ability to check if returning to the real world would be safe. And indeed he returned and found he could move. But he remained in place, listening to the clown's voice saying he wants to make a deal with him. Klein was the only one awake in controlling the artifact, and that would remain a secret between them. But the clown made 2 mistakes. First, he assumed Klein couldn't move, and second, that he was the only one awake. The deal was the clown would tell him what he knew about the Antigonus diary, and in exchange he'd free him and his friends. To gain Klein's trust, the clown told him about the seer's evolution to reach level 8. The clown moved closer to Klein while pretending to be trustworthy. At that moment, Klein grabbed the staff, pulled the clown in, shot it with fire, and brought it close to the artifact, which made it unable to move. Klein shot 2 rounds and finished it. They wrap Klein up, but the clown gets up behind him and says a single word, "Hermesis, Hermesis," then dies. Klein wakes up with the rest of the Night Falcons and Leo says to him, "I wanted to save you, but I found you could handle it alone. In this world, there are people special like you and me." They return to headquarters and store the diary behind Chinese gates. Dan is proud of what Klein did and will report this achievement so Klein can become an official member. Klein celebrates with Dan and notices the clown's corpse. He's given credit because killing that clown will save many people. Klein also tells the leader one more thing. He actually discovered the seer's evolution to level 8, it was the clown. After that, they bid farewell to the Night Falcons and the Knights Templar, who admired Klein's abilities. Klein felt a strange sensation which he later explained as the seer dose digesting, accelerated by him overusing his power. Now he'll start thinking about evolving, but first he needs the Joker dose and, more importantly, he must go to his university and meet his history professor to learn what Hermesis keeps repeating. He goes to the university and meets Professor Isaac Eagers and tells him the full story about the Antigonus diary, and that it mentions the Evernight state in the Hermesis Mountains, words familiar to Isaac who'd heard them before. Klein asks him to look into the matter, leaves, and Isaac mutters Antigonus. And from his shadow a skeleton emerges behind him. There are many secrets behind them. Isaac's secret will be revealed soon with events. That same night in the dark, a man screams, his fingers cut off. The leader of the secret order tortures him, and we learn this man was responsible for the Antigonus diary. Their problem is they can't exploit the diary's power because of its strangeness and the fact that to them it's just an ordinary diary. So they look for a sacrificial scapegoat to use to access the diary's power. 2 of those who could have been used died, and the diary is now with the Night Falcons. The leader was going to kill him, but at the last moment the victim says there's one last scapegoat left who could be sacrificed, and it turns out to be Klein, who surely discovered things in the diary. The next morning Klein was at the Night Falcons headquarters with old Neil, who will start teaching him the Transcendence weakest ritual used to ask power from a greater being. They call it the luck ritual. The old man prepares the required tools and warns Klein that if he asks power from an unknown being, he'll find himself in an abyss awaiting death. The old man completes the ritual, and at the end he asks that the debt, those 30 pounds he owes, be paid. For real. Afterwards Klein walks the street alone thinking about what happened to him and what's written in the Antigonus diary, and that to move past the level he's at he must use the way of acting and digest the dose. He reaches the conclusion that the way of acting means he must use his power as a seer while walking around, and meets the Seers Club and decides it's the best place to use his power. Klein decides to join them and meet the head seer there, who was in the middle of a lecture, finished, and gave a gift to a girl who was with him, the first person close to Klein. Klein feels a strange sensation but brushes it off. Maybe he's imagining things. He goes in and meets Vincent, who already knew Klein would come to the club and predicted that Klein's problems would be solved with words about gatherings and family. Klein leaves. "What are you thinking, dear? He didn't catch your eye?" Yeah, he's the one who wants to kill Klein. Klein gets home still thinking about how he'll return to his world, apparently via his fog power, but he must control it, and he has only 2 ways. Either keep evolving as a transcendent to reach a higher level to control it, or modify the luck ritual that brings him into this world until he reaches a ritual that gives him absolute control over the fog. Klein performs the ritual, enters the world, and summons the princess nicknamed Justice and the Hanged One. At the end of the gathering, Klein asks them 2 favors. Search for King Rozel's diaries and bring them to him, and secondly, perform ritual magic in their spare time. This magic he modified so they can contact him and seek his permission if they can't gather, and if it works he'll tweak it a bit more. The spell was, the Joker who does not belong to this world, the ruler above the gray fog, the king of yellow and black who possesses lucky fate. Here they realize the spell is directed at him, that he is an entity whose power they cannot imagine, possibly an ancient hidden presence. Klein interrupts their thoughts and asks them to do the spell and end the gathering. At that moment, a knock on the door interrupts, and out comes Melissa saying, "Get ready, it's my friend's birthday and we're all going out." Klein remembers Vincent's talk about gatherings and family and decides to go. He goes with Melissa and Benson, their 3rd brother, and they bought new clothes and went to Selena's house. There they meet Elizabeth, Melissa, and Selena's friend, the same ones Klein had seen at the Seers Club. At that moment, the sailor is doing the magic and Klein can sense it. They all go into the feast and celebrations, and at night the girls go up to Selena's room to see the gift, which was an antique mirror that predicts the future, and they decide to try it. Below, Klein senses black magic in the mirror and climbs up to the girls. He uses spirit vision and realizes this magic is stronger than his ability to cleanse, and decides to use the luck ritual and ask for power from the night gods. At that moment, the spirit trapped in the mirror enters Selena, and the magical mirror merges with her, linking her consciousness to Vincent and turning her into a monster. At that moment, Klein uses his power to bind Selena until she completes the ritual. Klein starts the ritual because it's his only chance to defeat the spirit, and he's almost done. Vincent uses his blood to strengthen the link between him and Selena and increases the spirit's power. The spirit can break Klein's restraints, and at the last moment Vincent manages to write his request on the paper and he's about to burn it. The mirror fully merges with Selena, and the spirit attacks the ritual to erase Klein's last hope of defeating it. With a shot, Klein manages to repel the spirit's attacks, and the second shot was on her, but she manages to dodge it. The spirit manages to tie Klein with her hair and repeats what Vincent says. "What did you learn about the Antigonus diary? This place will become your tomb, all of you." And Klein loses consciousness. A voice from nowhere says, "The Joker who does not belong to this world, the ruler above the gray fog, the king of yellow and black who possesses lucky fate." The princess is performing the ritual which gives Klein control over the fog and allows him to save himself. Vincent tries again to the extent he cuts off his own hand to strengthen the spirit. The spirit attacks Klein, but Klein's request is accepted and the night gods pull the spirit from Selena. The mirror comes out of her body and Klein breaks it. Let's see Vincent after losing his last chance at life. He tries to grab Klein, who attempts to escape, but the organization leader is in front of him and finishes him. Klein and Dan go to Vincent's house because he gave the mirror to Selena, but they find him dead in his house. They manage to enter his mind moments before death and find an inverted, serial creature called the Creator. It looks like events are heading us toward another level of power. A few days after this incident, Klein and Dan were at a play made especially for the hero Tris. What's his story? They say a ship called the Alfalfa had most of its passengers controlled by evil powers who killed each other, and he was the one who saved the rest and brought the ship back. Back to Klein and Dan with one of the survivors from the ship named Meyer, who days earlier, Klein, while working as a fortune teller at the Prophecy Club, predicted to his wife that he would return alive from the trip he was on. But Meyer returned gloomy and anxious, and that made Klein ask him what's bothering him. What haunted him was a nightmare that plagued him every night since he returned from the ship. Klein was able to enter his mind and see the nightmare: a ship full of blood, a grown man killing an infant, and not only that, then he kills himself. He tried to save him, but later learns this is magic. Klein saw something Meyer overlooked. Tris himself incited them to kill each other and convinced them he was the heroic savior. Suddenly Klein finds himself in a palace and hears the same word repeating, "Hermesis, Hermesis." He wakes up shaken and goes to tell Dan that Tris is the cause. But that's not enough proof to condemn someone known as a hero, and the solution is the investigators must investigate the case until they find evidence. After that, Neil and Klein go to a secret underground place, a hidden market known by few, to buy items they need, and there they find Tris buying strange magical items for women, not men. They follow him, but they're not the only ones following him. The detectives found evidence in nearby cities inciting murder and suicide and that he had links to them. Tris fled when the investigators noticed. Shots were fired and they managed to wound him in the shoulder, and his cap fell off and Klein grabbed it. Tris escaped and vanished in the smoke. Tris managed to flee, and it was Klein's turn to search for him with spirit vision. He managed to find his location, and in a way we know he is a beyond from level 8, which arouses the worst desires of humans, and that he takes orders from a satanic cult composed entirely of women who worship the devil, the Creator. They reached Tris' place and everyone who was inside came out. All of them were Tris' women and none of them were missing. How did he disappear? I forgot to tell you something small, buddy. Before all this, Tris was at home and a woman from the satanic cult came to him and informed him of a new mission, but he must do it for a woman, and the promised reward is a potion that will move him to level 7 and will be the witch path. So now you've gathered the events and know that when the Night Falcons reached Tris, he had already drunk the potion and turned into a witch and escaped them. The Night Falcons and the investigators searched for 3 days and couldn't find Tris, so they closed the case. And things remained calm for a while, no problems. Klein established himself at his job, frequented the Seers Club to digest the dose, tarot club gatherings. He also trained with Neil on seer abilities and physical training. Everything went fine until a string of murders began, victims dying one after another, appearing to be natural deaths. But that doesn't rule out murder. Klein could see the victims' pasts and they all had one thing in common. Before their deaths, a delicate hand touched them, a girl's hand. The Night Falcons gather and conclude that this girl is with Tris and incites people to kill themselves, unaware that Tris himself might be the witch. Leo and Klein arrive at a theory that the common factor among them all is that the victims would have died anyway. The sick one, the one planning suicide, the poor dying of hunger, the killer just sped up their deaths. These aren't random victims. He'll use them to resurrect the evil being they worship. What is this serial creature, and will it be freed? All of Leo's secrets, and Isaac's secret, the master of the dead, we'll find out in part 2 of the video. And if you made it this far with me, like and subscribe to the channel. And remember, if you feel like no one loves you, Senpai always loves you. Bye, Senpai's darling.